Jake Morrison walked down the long metal hallway of the UES Horizon with his usual steady pace. The ship hummed quietly around him as it moved through space toward the meeting point with the alien diplomats. Jake had been doing this job for 3 weeks now, and he was starting to get used to the routine. Every morning he would check the security systems, walk through the diplomatic quarters, and make sure everything was working properly for their alien guests. The Zephyrians had arrived 2 days ago, and Jake had only seen them from a distance. They were tall and graceful with blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer in the ship's lights. Their leader was called Ambassador Lara, and she moved like she was swimming even when she walked on dry ground. Jake found them fascinating, but he kept his distance as ordered. His job was to watch and protect, not to interact. The diplomatic quarters were located in the quietest part of the ship. The walls were thicker here, and the lighting was different. The Zephyrians needed more humidity and cooler temperatures than humans, so the entire section had been modified for their comfort. Jake's boots made soft sounds on the special flooring as he made his morning rounds. Everything seemed normal until his communication device beeped with an urgent alert. A sensor in the Zephyrian quarters was showing unusual readings. Jake frowned and looked at the small screen. The environmental systems were detecting strange energy patterns from Ambassador Lyra's private chambers. This could be a malfunction. Or it could be something more serious. Jake hurried toward the source of the alert. He had strict orders about the aliens' privacy, but a sensor malfunction could be dangerous. If their life support systems were failing, he needed to act quickly. He reached the door to the ambassador's private chambers and pressed his ear against the metal surface. He could hear the sound of running water from inside. The sensor readings were getting stronger. Jake's training told him to check the external controls first. He moved to the small maintenance panel beside the door and opened it carefully. The readings were definitely coming from inside the room. He needed to see what was happening, but he also needed to respect the ambassador's privacy. Jake found a small maintenance access point that would let him check the environmental systems without entering the main room. He opened the tiny panel and peered through the narrow opening. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Ambassador Lyra was in what appeared to be a large bathing pool that had been installed in her quarters, but this was not ordinary bathing. Her skin was glowing, with patterns of light that moved and shifted like living things. The patterns were not random. They formed complex shapes that seemed to have meaning. Jake watched in amazement as the lights on her skin created geometric forms that hurt his eyes to look at directly. The water around her was doing something impossible. It was forming shapes in the air above the pool, not splashing or spraying, but actually forming solid-looking structures that defied gravity. Jake saw triangles and circles and other forms that he had no names for. The water moved in ways that made no sense according to everything he knew about physics. Ambassador Lyra raised her arms and the water responded. It formed a perfect sphere above her head and then slowly changed into a cube. The cube rotated and split into smaller cubes that danced around each other in perfect harmony. Jake realized he was watching something that should not be possible. The patterns on her skin grew brighter and more complex. Jake could see mathematical sequences in the lights, numbers and symbols that seemed to be written in pure energy across her blue-green skin. His human brain struggled to process what he was seeing, but somehow he found himself beginning to understand parts of it. The water shapes became more elaborate. They formed structures that looked like buildings or machines made entirely of moving liquid. Jake watched as the ambassador seemed to be conducting some kind of symphony with the water and light. Every movement of her hands created new patterns and new impossible shapes. Jake realized that this was not just bathing or even some kind of religious ritual. This was something much more significant. The ambassador was manipulating the basic forces of reality itself. She was changing the way matter and energy worked in the space around her. The mathematical patterns on her skin were equations that controlled the fundamental laws of physics. His communication device beeped again with another sensor alert. Jake quickly checked the readings and saw that the energy patterns were getting stronger. Whatever the ambassador was doing, it was affecting the ship's systems. He needed to report this, but he also realized that he was witnessing something that was probably supposed to be secret. The water structures began to form. More complex shapes. Jake saw what looked like star maps and technical diagrams floating in the liquid above the pool. The ambassador was creating three-dimensional images out of pure water, and they were showing detailed information about space travel and advanced technology. Jake's mind raced as he tried to understand what he was seeing. This was far beyond anything that human science could explain. The Zephyrians had technology that allowed them to control matter at the most basic level. They could make water ignore gravity and create light patterns that contained actual information. Suddenly, Ambassador Lyra stopped her movements. The water shapes collapsed back into the pool with a soft splash. The light patterns on her skin began to fade. Jake realized that the ritual, or whatever it was, might be ending. He needed to leave before she discovered that he had been watching. Jake carefully closed the maintenance panel and moved away from the door. His heart was beating fast and his mind was filled with questions. What had he just witnessed? How was it possible? And most importantly, what did this mean for humanity's relationship with the Zephyrians? He walked back down the hallway trying to look casual, but his thoughts were spinning. The sensor alerts had stopped and everything appeared normal again. Jake completed his security rounds, but he could not focus on his routine tasks. The images of the impossible water shapes and the mathematical light patterns kept playing in his mind. When he returned to his quarters that evening, Jake sat on his small bed and stared at the wall. He had witnessed something that changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. The Zephyrians possessed abilities that were far beyond human understanding. They could manipulate reality itself, and they had been hiding this capability from humanity. Jake realized that he was probably the only human who had ever seen what the Zephyrians could really do. This knowledge felt like a heavy weight on his shoulders. He had stumbled upon a secret that could change the course of human history. The question now was what he should do with this information. Jake could not sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the impossible water shapes and the glowing patterns on Ambassador Lyra's skin. The images played over and over in his mind like a recording that would not stop. He had seen something that challenged everything he thought he knew about science and reality. The next morning, Jake went to his duty station early. He had access to the ship's computer systems as part of his security clearance. While the other crew members were still having breakfast, Jake began searching through the classified databases for information about the Zephyrians. He needed to understand what he had witnessed. The official reports about the Zephyrians described them as an advanced aquatic species with peaceful intentions. They had made contact with humanity 6 months ago through long-range communications. The reports mentioned their superior technology and their interest in cultural exchange, but Jake found nothing about the incredible abilities he had seen Ambassador Lyra demonstrate. Jake dug deeper into the files. He found biological reports about Zephyrian physiology. Their bodies were adapted for both water and air environments. They had unique neural structures that were different from any other known species. Their brains were larger than human brains and had additional sections that scientists did not fully understand. The more Jake read, the more questions he had. The scientific reports mentioned that Zephyrians had an unusual relationship with electromagnetic fields. Their skin could conduct electrical energy in ways that human skin could not. But the reports treated this as a minor biological curiosity, not as something that could manipulate matter itself. Jake found references to Zephyrian technology. That seemed impossible by human standards. They had developed faster than light travel thousands of years before humans had even discovered fire. Their ships could travel between star systems in ways that human scientists could not explain. The report suggested that Zephyrian technology was based on principles that humans had not yet discovered. As Jake continued reading, he began to piece together a disturbing picture. The Zephyrians were not just more advanced than humans, they were operating on a completely different level of reality. Their technology was not based on machines and electronics like human technology. It was based on direct manipulation of The fundamental forces of the universe. Jake remembered the mathematical patterns he had seen on Ambassador Lyra's skin. He opened a new search and looked for information about quantum physics and reality manipulation. The theoretical papers he found described concepts that were far beyond current human capabilities. Scientists had theories about controlling matter at the subatomic level, but no one had ever achieved anything close to what Jake had witnessed. The more Jake learned, the more he realized that he had stumbled upon something incredibly significant. The Zephyrians possessed abilities that made them essentially gods compared to humans. They could manipulate reality itself through some kind of biological interface with quantum fields. This was not just advanced technology, this was power. Beyond human comprehension, Jake began to wonder why the Zephyrians had revealed so little about their true capabilities. The official diplomatic reports presented them as friendly aliens interested in peaceful cooperation. But if they could manipulate reality at will, why did they need to cooperate with anyone? Why had they even bothered to make contact with humanity? Meanwhile, Ambassador Lyra had noticed something unusual about the human security officer. During her quantum manipulation ritual the previous day, she had sensed a presence watching her. Most species would have suffered immediate neural collapse if they had witnessed her interfacing with the quantum field. The reality distortions created by her abilities were too complex for most minds to process. But the human had not only survived the exposure, he had seemed to understand what he was seeing. Lyra had felt his mind trying to process the mathematical sequences displayed on her skin. This was unprecedented in her long experience with other species. No non-Zephyrian had ever been able to comprehend quantum manipulation without suffering severe brain damage. Lyra began observing Jake Morrison more carefully. She watched him during his security rounds and noticed changes in his behavior. He was accessing computer systems and researching information about her species. His movement patterns had changed, and he seemed to be avoiding direct contact with the Zephyrian delegation. This suggested that he was not only aware of what he had seen, but was actively trying to understand it. The ambassador realized that she was facing a unique situation. In the Zephyrian collective's 50,000-year history, no other species had demonstrated the cognitive flexibility to survive exposure to quantum manipulation. The fact that this human had not only survived but was apparently trying to understand what he had witnessed was both fascinating and potentially dangerous. Lyra had been part of many first contact missions with primitive species. The standard procedure was to assess the species' potential threat level and report back to the collective. Most species were eventually eliminated or contained once they began to develop interstellar travel. Only a few were allowed to join the galactic community as junior members, but humans appeared to be different. Their neural architecture was unlike anything the collective had encountered before. They showed an unusual ability to adapt and learn new concepts rapidly. This flexibility might allow them to develop capabilities that could challenge the established order of the galaxy. The collective had been monitoring Earth for centuries, waiting to see how humanity would develop. A decision to make contact had been controversial among the elder species. Some argued that humans were too dangerous and should be eliminated before they could spread beyond their home planet. Others believed that humanity could be controlled and guided into a harmless role in the galactic community. Lyra had been sent to Earth as part of a careful assessment mission. Her job was to evaluate human capabilities and determine whether they posed a threat to the established powers. The quantum manipulation ritual she performed daily was not just for personal maintenance. It was a test to see if any humans could perceive or understand what she was doing. The fact that Jake Morrison had not only perceived, but seemed to comprehend her abilities changed everything. If humans possessed the neural flexibility to understand quantum manipulation, they might be capable of developing similar abilities themselves. This would make them potentially the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. Lyra made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. Instead of reporting Jake's unusual capabilities to the collective immediately, she chose to study him further. She needed to understand exactly what humans were capable of before making her final assessment. The future of both species might depend on what she discovered about this remarkable human security officer who had accidentally witnessed something that should have been impossible for him to comprehend. 3 days after Jake had witnessed Ambassador Lyra's quantum manipulation ritual, he received an unexpected message on his personal communication device. The message was simple and direct. "Security Officer Morrison, I would like to discuss some security protocols with you. Please meet me in conference room 7 at 1400 hours today, Ambassador Lyra." Jake stared at the message for a long time. He had been avoiding direct contact with the Zephyrian delegation since his accidental discovery. The timing of this request seemed too convenient to be coincidental. Did she know that he had seen her ritual? Was this some kind of test or trap? Jake spent the morning trying to prepare for the meeting. He reviewed all the security protocols and diplomatic procedures, but he knew that this meeting was probably about something much more significant than routine security matters. He arrived at conference room 7 5 minutes early and waited nervously for the ambassador to arrive. Ambassador Lyra entered the room with her characteristic flowing movement. She was taller than Jake had expected, standing almost 7 feet in height. Her blue-green skin had a subtle shimmer that reminded Jake of the light patterns he had seen during her ritual. Her large eyes were an unusual silver color that seemed to reflect more light than normal eyes should. "Thank you for meeting with me, Security Officer Morrison," Lyra said in her melodious voice. "I hope you do not mind that I requested this private discussion." Jake stood at attention and replied formally, "Not at all, Ambassador. I am here to assist with any security concerns you may have." Lyra moved to the far side of the conference table and gestured for Jake to sit down. "Please let us sit and speak more casually. I have been observing the security arrangements on your ship, and I am impressed with the thoroughness of your procedures." Jake sat down carefully, trying to read the ambassador's intentions. Her manner was friendly, but he sensed that she was studying him closely. "We want to ensure your comfort and safety during your stay aboard the Horizon," Jake replied. "Yes, I have noticed your dedication to your duties," Lyra said with what might have been a smile. "You are very thorough in your security rounds. I have seen you checking the environmental systems regularly." Jake felt his heart rate increase. This was definitely about more than routine security. "Yes, Ambassador. We monitor all systems to ensure they are functioning properly for your needs." Lyra leaned forward slightly. "I'm curious about something, Security Officer Morrison. During your monitoring duties, have you noticed any unusual readings from the environmental sensors?" Jake knew that this was the moment of truth. He could lie and pretend that he had seen nothing, or he could admit that he had witnessed something extraordinary. The ambassador's silver eyes seemed to be looking directly into his mind. "There have been some unusual energy readings from time to time," Jake said carefully. "Ah, yes," Lyra nodded. "Those readings are related to certain biological processes that are necessary for my health. They are quite normal for my species, but I understand they might seem unusual to human sensors." Jake realized that the ambassador was giving him an opportunity to reveal what he had actually seen. This was a test of some kind. "The readings were quite complex," Jake said. "They showed patterns that I have never seen before." Lyra's expression became more serious. "Patterns can be very revealing, can they not? Sometimes they contain information that is not immediately obvious to the observer." Jake took a deep breath and decided to take a calculated risk. The patterns appeared to be mathematical in nature. They seemed to follow sequences that were related to quantum field equations. The change in Ambassador Lyra's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. Her silver eyes widened and she sat back in her chair as if Jake had just said something impossible. "That is a very interesting observation, Security Officer Morrison. What makes you think these patterns were related to quantum physics?" Jake realized that he had just crossed a line that there was no going back from. "I have studied theoretical physics as part of my education. The mathematical sequences I observed appeared to be describing relationships between matter and energy at the subatomic level." Lyra stared at Jake for a long moment without speaking. Her skin began to show faint traces of the light patterns he had seen during her ritual. You are saying that you observed these patterns and your mind was able to process and understand them? Yes, Ambassador. At least partially. I could see that they were mathematical relationships, even though I do not fully understand all the implications. Lyra stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. Security Officer Morrison, what I'm about to tell you will change your understanding of everything you thought you knew about the universe. Are you prepared for that? Jake nodded, although he was not sure he was prepared for anything. Yes, Ambassador. What you witnessed was not a biological process for my health. It was something that my species calls quantum field manipulation. We have the ability to interface directly with the fundamental forces of reality and change them according to our will. Jake felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. You can manipulate reality itself? Yes, Lyra replied. And in the 50,000-year history of my species, no other race has ever been able to observe this process without suffering immediate and permanent mental damage. The fact that you not only survived the exposure but understood what you were seeing is unprecedented. Jake's mind raced as he tried to process this information. Why would observing your abilities cause mental damage? Because most species have neural architectures that cannot process the reality distortions created by quantum manipulation. Their brains simply cannot handle the contradiction between what they are seeing and what they believe to be possible. It causes immediate neural collapse. But humans are different? Lyra turned back to face Jake. It appears that humans have a unique cognitive flexibility that allows them to adapt to new information even when it contradicts their existing understanding of reality. This makes your species either incredibly valuable or incredibly dangerous. Jake realized that this conversation was about much more than his accidental discovery. Ambassador, why are you telling me this? Because Security Officer Morrison, you may be the key to understanding whether humanity deserves to survive its first contact with the galactic community. Most species that develop interstellar travel are eventually eliminated or contained when they become a threat to the established order. But humans appear to possess capabilities that we have never encountered before. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying that humanity is in danger? I'm saying that humanity's future depends on what we learn about your species. True potential. And you, Security Officer Morrison, may be the first human to demonstrate abilities that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Lyra moved closer to Jake, and her skin began to glow with faint mathematical patterns. The question now is whether you are willing to help me understand what humans are truly capable of. Are you prepared to learn things that will change not just your life, but the destiny of your entire species? Jake stared at Ambassador Lyra as her words sank in. The idea that humanity's survival depended on what he did in the next few minutes was almost too much to comprehend. Ambassador, I need to understand what you mean by the galactic community. Are you saying there are many other species out there? Lyra's skin patterns shifted to show what appeared to be a map of the galaxy. Security Officer Morrison, the galaxy contains thousands of intelligent species. Most of them have been part of a coalition of elder races for millennia. Humanity is not the first species to develop interstellar travel, and you will not be the last. Jake watched the light patterns on her skin form shapes that looked like star systems and trade routes. But your government told us that the Zephyrians were the first aliens to make contact with humanity. That is true, but it is not the complete truth. The elder species have been watching Earth for over 3,000 years. We have been debating what to do about humanity since your species first began to show signs of advanced intelligence. The implications of this statement hit Jake like a physical blow. You have been watching us for 3,000 years? Why did you wait so long to make contact? Lyra moved her hands, and the light patterns on her skin changed to show images of human history. Jake could see recognizable shapes that looked like ancient civilizations, wars, and technological developments. The Coalition has protocols for dealing with emerging species. We monitor their development and assess their potential threat level. Most species follow predictable patterns of growth and can be easily managed when they become spacefaring. But humans are different? Humans have shown an alarming tendency to exceed all predictions about their development. Your species has advanced technologically faster than any other race in recorded galactic history. More importantly, humans show no signs of reaching a developmental plateau. Jake frowned as he tried to understand what she meant. What do you mean by a developmental plateau? Most species reach a point where their neural architecture limits their ability to understand more complex concepts. They develop to a certain level of technology and then stop progressing. This makes them predictable and manageable. But humans seem to have no such limitations. Lyra gestured and her skin patterns showed images of different alien species. The Corellians reached their peak 12,000 years ago and have not developed any new technologies since then. The Vex-3 achieved faster than light travel 15,000 years ago and have been using the same methods ever since. Every species eventually reaches a point where they cannot learn anything new. Except humans? Except humans. Your species shows an unprecedented ability to adapt and learn new concepts. You take ideas from other sources and combine them in ways that create entirely new possibilities. This makes you potentially the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever encountered. Jake felt his worldview shifting as he processed this information. Ambassador, are you saying that the Coalition sees humanity as a threat? I am saying that the Coalition has been debating whether to eliminate humanity before you can spread beyond your home solar system. The decision to make contact was controversial. Many of the elder species wanted to destroy Earth while they still could. The casual way that Lyra mentioned destroying Earth made Jake's blood run cold. They wanted to destroy our entire planet? It would not be the first time. The Coalition has eliminated 17 emerging species in the past 50,000 years. It is considered necessary for maintaining galactic stability. Jake stood up from his chair and began pacing around the small conference room. So this diplomatic mission is not really about cultural exchange. You are here to decide whether humanity lives or dies. That was the original plan, yes. I was sent to assess human capabilities and determine whether your species could be controlled, or whether elimination was necessary. Jake stopped pacing and looked directly at the ambassador. Was? Lyra's skin patterns became more complex and Jake could see mathematical equations forming and dissolving in the light. Your ability to comprehend quantum manipulation changes everything. If humans can understand and potentially develop similar abilities, the balance of power in the galaxy could shift dramatically. What do you mean? The Coalition of Elder Species has maintained control for millennia because we possess technologies that younger races cannot understand or duplicate. The Zephyrians can manipulate reality at the quantum level. The Corellians can control gravitational fields. The Vex-3 can manipulate time itself. Jake felt overwhelmed by the scope of what he was learning. And you think humans might be able to develop similar abilities? I think humans might be able to develop abilities that surpass all of ours. Your neural architecture appears to have no limits. You can adapt to concepts that would destroy other minds. This makes you either the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat in galactic history. Lyra moved closer to Jake, and her skin patterns showed images of vast space fleets and battles between different species. The Coalition maintains peace through superior technology and the threat of elimination. If humans develop quantum manipulation abilities, you could challenge the established order of the galaxy. But why would that be a bad thing? Maybe the galaxy needs change. Change is dangerous when it threatens the survival of established civilizations. The elder species have worked for thousands of years to create a stable galactic order. Humans could destroy that stability. Jake realized that he was at the center of a conflict that was much larger than he had imagined. Ambassador, what happens now? Are you going to recommend that the Coalition destroy humanity? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. The light patterns on her skin shifted through complex mathematical sequences as she considered her response. Security Officer Morrison, I am facing a decision that will affect the future of both our species. I could report your abilities to the Coalition and recommend immediate elimination of humanity. Or I could try something that has never been attempted before. What do you mean? I could teach you to understand quantum manipulation and see if humans can truly develop these abilities. If successful, it would prove that humans are capable of joining the elder species as equals rather than as subjects. Jake felt the weight of this decision settling on his shoulders. And if I cannot learn these abilities, then humanity will be classified as a manageable threat and will be allowed to exist under strict limitations. You will be permitted to develop interstellar travel but will be prevented from expanding beyond a small number of star systems. And if I can learn quantum manipulation, then we will have proven that humans are capable of becoming a new type of elder species. This could lead to a partnership between humans and Zephyrians that could change the galaxy forever. Lyra's silver eyes fixed on Jake with an intensity that made him feel like she was looking into his soul. Security Officer Morrison, I am offering you the chance to determine humanity's destiny. Are you willing to risk everything to discover what humans are truly capable of? Jake looked out the window at the stars beyond and thought about everyone he had ever known on Earth. The decision he made in the next few moments would affect every human being who had ever lived or would ever live. Ambassador, I accept your offer. Teach me what you can and let us see what humans can become. The training began immediately after Jake accepted Ambassador Lyra's offer. They met in secret during the night shifts when most of the crew was sleeping. Lyra had modified her quarters to create a safe environment for Jake to learn quantum manipulation, without risking damage to the ship's systems. The first thing you must understand, Lyra explained as they stood beside the pool where Jake had first witnessed her abilities, is that quantum manipulation is not about forcing reality to change. It is about understanding the mathematical relationships that already exist and learning to adjust them. Jake watched as Lyra placed her hands just above the water surface. Her skin began to glow with the familiar light patterns, and the water responded by forming a simple sphere that floated in the air. Reality is not solid and unchanging as most species believe. Everything is energy in different forms, and energy can be influenced if you know the correct equations. How do I begin to learn these equations? Jake asked. First, you must learn to perceive the quantum field that surrounds all matter. Close your eyes and extend your hands over the water. Try to feel the energy patterns that exist beneath the surface of reality. Jake followed her instructions and closed his eyes. At first, he felt nothing except the normal sensations of air temperature and humidity. But gradually he began to sense something else. There was a subtle vibration in the space around the water, like a very faint electrical field that seemed to pulse with mathematical rhythms. I think I can feel something, Jake said softly. It is like a pattern that exists in the space around the water. Lyra's excitement was visible in the increased brightness of her skin patterns. Yes, that is the quantum field. You are perceiving the energy structures that most species cannot sense. Now try to understand the pattern you are feeling. Jake concentrated harder and found that the vibrations he sensed seemed to follow sequences that reminded him of the mathematical equations he had studied in school. The patterns were complex, but they had a logical structure that his mind could begin to follow. The patterns seemed to be describing the molecular structure of the water, Jake said. I can sense how the atoms are arranged and how they are moving. Excellent. Now try to imagine changing one small part of that pattern. Do not force anything, just visualize a slight adjustment to the mathematical relationship. Jake focused on a small section of the pattern he was sensing and imagined changing one variable in the equation. To his amazement, he felt the quantum field respond to his thoughts. The water in the pool began to ripple, even though neither he nor Lyra had touched it. Remarkable, Lyra whispered. You are learning faster than I thought possible. It took me years of training to achieve that level of control. Over the following weeks, Jake's abilities developed rapidly. He learned to create simple shapes with water and to generate light patterns on his own skin. The mathematical equations that controlled quantum manipulation began to make sense to his human mind in ways that surprised both him and Lyra. What fascinated Lyra most was how Jake approached The learning process. Zephyrians learned quantum manipulation through rigid training methods that had been used for thousands of years. But Jake instinctively combined different techniques and created new approaches that were more efficient than traditional methods. You are not just learning our abilities, Lyra told him during one of their training sessions. You are improving them. The techniques you have developed are more powerful than anything my species has achieved. Jake had discovered that human pattern recognition abilities allowed him to see connections in the quantum field equations that Zephyrians missed. He could combine multiple mathematical relationships simultaneously in ways that created entirely new possibilities for reality manipulation. I think the difference is that humans are used to adapting and changing, Jake explained. We have always had to find new solutions to problems. Your species has been using the same methods for so long that you might have stopped looking for better ways. Together, Jake and Lyra developed hybrid techniques that combined Zephyrian quantum manipulation with human innovation. These new methods allowed them to create effects that neither species had been able to achieve alone. They could manipulate matter and energy with precision and power that exceeded anything in the known galaxy. As Jake's abilities grew stronger, Lyra realized that her original assessment had been correct. Humans possessed unlimited potential for development and adaptation. But rather than seeing this as a threat, she began to understand it as an opportunity for both species to achieve something greater than either could accomplish separately. Security. Officer Morrison, Lyra said one evening as they concluded another training session, I have made a decision that will change both our futures. I am not going to report your abilities to the Coalition as a threat to be eliminated. What will you tell them? I am going to propose something that has never been attempted in galactic history. I want to establish a true partnership between humans and Zephyrians. Not the usual relationship where an elder species guides a younger one, but a genuine alliance between equals. Jake understood the significance of what she was proposing. Ambassador, that would mean going against everything the Coalition believes about maintaining galactic order. Yes, it would. But I believe that the galaxy needs the kind of change that humans can bring. Your species' ability to adapt and innovate could solve problems that the elder races have been unable to address for millennia. What problems? The galaxy is not as stable as the Coalition pretends. There are threats from outside our region of space that we have been hiding from younger species. Dark energy storms that destroy entire star systems. Hostile forces from other dimensions that the elder races cannot defeat with traditional methods. Lyra's skin patterns showed images of cosmic disasters and alien invasions that made Jake realize the scope of the challenges facing galactic civilization. The Coalition maintains control by hiding these threats and pretending that everything is stable, but we need new approaches and new solutions if we are going to survive what is coming. And you think humans can help solve these problems? I think humans and Zephyrians working together can develop abilities that could protect the entire galaxy. Your species' adaptability combined with our knowledge of quantum manipulation could create possibilities that none of us have imagined. Jake looked out at the stars through the window of Lyra's quarters and thought about the magnitude of what they were discussing. Ambassador, are you suggesting that we reveal our alliance to both our peoples? I am suggesting that we prepare to change the course of galactic history. When this diplomatic mission ends, I will return to my people with a proposal for a new kind of relationship with humanity. And you will prepare your species for the knowledge that they are not alone in the universe, and that their future depends on learning to work with alien allies. That will not be easy. Most humans still do not know that aliens exist at all. No, it will not be easy. But the alternative is to allow the Coalition to limit human development and miss the opportunity to solve the greatest challenges facing our galaxy. Lyra moved to stand beside Jake at the window. Security Officer Morrison, we have discovered that humans and Zephyrians together can achieve things that neither species can accomplish alone. Now we must convince both our peoples that cooperation is not just beneficial, but necessary for survival. Jake realized that his accidental glimpse of an alien bathing ritual had led to something far greater than he could have imagined. He had not just witnessed alien technology, he had discovered humanity's destiny as partners in a galactic alliance that could change the future of every living being in the universe.